This is Self-Starter. Hi everyone, welcome back to Self-Starter. This is the last episode of Season 1, and I wasn't going to go into the spiel, but I may as well do it anyway. This is a podcast that highlights the small business owners, the self-employed and freelancers who have taken that plunge to create their own desirable lifestyle. If we haven't met already, my name's Andy Dowling. I also host the Andy Social podcast. I play bass in the Australian metal band Lord, and I'm also a dispute resolution specialist. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching @Andy Dowling, or you can go over to selfstarter.com.au where you can learn more about yours truly, as well as anything and everything to do with the self-employment world. Now, as this is the last episode of Season 1, I thought I'd just do a really short, bite-sized episode just to give a bit of context as to where the podcast is now, where it's going in the future, and just a bit of reflection of the last 12 months of what this podcast has done. And there's been a lot of great wins along the way. Now, you're going to hear my cockatiel in the background, Larry Burb, chime in every once in a while. This is going to be a very rough around the edges episode. I'm going to trip up on all sorts of things because I've written a whole bunch of notes. So I'll try and keep it short and sweet, but bear with me. It will be a little bit rough around the edges. But we are at the end of Season 1, and there's going to be a break for Season 2. It's going to be about 6 months. So June 2019, Season 2 will kick off. But over the past 12 months, the podcast has done really great things for me. It's opened up my world to how many people have created, as I always say, their own desirable lifestyle through their own self-employment journey. And I've started out the podcast down here in the Shoalhaven on the south coast of New South Wales, and it's gradually built out and extended across the country. And it's been quite challenging at times. So the podcast has been up and running for about 12 months now, but the pre-planning to get it up to that first episode being launched was quite an ordeal, and I had to get a lot of buy-in from the local area, which I did get a lot of great businesses that did jump on board, but not everybody was interested or couldn't understand the concept of what a podcast was, and that's an ongoing challenge for me, especially when you deal with a lot of regional areas. So for me, this podcast was sparked from this real desire to break the stigma of living in regional parts of the country, especially with connectivity through the internet getting better and better. And we won't get into an NBN debate, but it is getting better and it is easier to earn money no matter where you are in the world. So I think for people that want a lifestyle change and want to live in a non-metro area, there are still great opportunities to be employed in one way or another. So the episodes that have come out over the last 12 months have been a mixed bag of lots of different industries, lots of different businesses and different stages of business as well. And hopefully it's shed a lot of light on lots of different types of stories. And there have been a lot of common traits along the way, and most of that's come around or has been focused on mindset. And for me personally, that's where I've taken the most out of these conversations with different guests along the way. One of the really cool things around that mindset was it doesn't matter where you are. Everyone has those same types of challenges, that the imposter syndrome, the fear of putting yourself out there and seeing whether anybody responds to you, the rejection, the judgment of others, all these things are shared no matter where you are. And for me, as the podcast continued to evolve and I was speaking to more and more people, and I was reflecting on my own self-employment journey, because I do a number of things, and podcasting being one of them. And I'm always trying to find those secret ingredients that will help me on my own journey. And as I started to extend and go to different parts of the country, I realized that while I do have a big passion to break those stigmas of the regional areas, I do think that there's a lot of stories that are coming from the major capital cities as well that could be quite beneficial for everybody that tunes into the podcast. So when I get into Season 2, I'm going to extend out and reach out to a lot of people that I know, whether it be in music or in other industries that have set up their own businesses in metro areas around the country, and share their stories, because there are a lot of common traits along the way. Now, part of these reasons are why I'm going to take a 6-month gap between Season 1 and Season 2, and I've had a few people ask me about this. The big thing for me is that I really think that the term knowledge is power is one thing, but I think the action with that knowledge is where you get the real power. And for me, I've taken in so much information over the past 12 months from the stories on Self-Starter that I need to put some of this into action for myself, whether it be for Self-Starter or for Andy Social, for the band, or whatever it might be. I really need to implement some of these great things that I've learned along the way. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing in this 6-month gap between season 1 and season 2 is improving the self-starter website with the blog. That's something that I really am passionate about, but it has been neglected like most blogs out there. So I have a few stretch goals where I'm going to try and get that all up to date just before season 2 kicks back off. There's a number of other self-starter things that I'd like to do around packaged content, different forms of content and value for people, maybe some in-person things later on down the track as well. And I'm really open for you guys that have been listening and following the journey along the way and listening to all these different stories. Where do you think this could go? Like what sort of ideas do you have as to what self-starter could do and what it could extend out to later on down the track? But there's a lot of brainstorming. There's a lot of things that I have to put into action, a lot of ideas or things that I've procrastinated over or just put to the side because I've been really sort of focused on trying to maintain the schedule of this podcast. And it's time to take some action. So over the next 6 months, there are a number of things that I'll be doing behind the scenes. You'll see the blog continue to be used and more blog posts being put out there. I'll continue to record episodes for season 2. So if you do know anybody, as I've always said in the past, any friends or family or yourself might be on your own self-employment journey, you've got your own business, please make contact with me because I'd love to have a chat, work out what you're doing, and if we can maybe get an episode together, and we'll start to bank those episodes up for season 2. One of the other things that I'm going to do is by the time season 2 starts, I will look to archive season 1. I'll put it together as a package download or something like that, where people will be able to access season 1 and all the stories and the information and be able to do like a bundled download or whatever it might be. So people will still be able to access season 1 right up until June 2019. And then I will most likely, and I mean, who knows, things can change, but I'll most likely archive season 1 and then make it available for people that want to check it out at a later date. But for you that's listening to this now, most likely you've been following all the way through from November 2017. So you'll already have this information and this content already at your fingertips. But if you are listening to this later on, then that's a bit of context. And also, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that I know who have started to pass some of this information on to other people that they know, work colleagues, friends, family. So please reach out to these people and just let them know that this content is available and people can access it. But going into later into 2019, we will start to archive some of this content as well. So thanks, Larry, my bird in the background. So a few calls to action before we wrap up this episode, just a few things to think about. So if you are still listening to me waffle on, you've actually bothered to listen to this final wrap-up episode for season 1, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast for the past 12 months. And if you know anybody that is on their own self-employment journey or is all talk, those people that have always got an idea but never act on it, people that are always sort of wishing for something better but never quite get started for whatever reason, and I've certainly been there myself, and I know a lot of people in that boat, please share this podcast around to other people. Maybe there's a particular episode or a story that you've listened to on this podcast so far that could spark an idea or spark a bit of motivation and drive in somebody that you care about as well. And for me, this podcast started for me to learn myself, and it's a great way to stick a microphone in front of someone's face and have a chat and learn from somebody instead of just bailing them up on the street. And so but the extension to that is that I'm being able to help other people and provide value to other people. And I've had a lot of great feedback over the past 12 months where this podcast and this information that's being shared is helping a lot of people get started or push through those challenging times or whatever stage they are at their self-employment journey. So please keep sharing it around over the coming months, and it always helps. Leave some reviews around the place. So on Facebook, you can leave a recommendation on the Facebook page for Self-Starter. You can do the Apple Podcast, you can do Stitcher and all that sort of stuff. Anywhere you can leave a review on any of the podcast platforms is greatly appreciated, and that all helps, as you would all know. The suggestions, please keep those guest suggestions coming. As I mentioned before, it doesn't matter where people are in the country. I am going to stick just with Australia. Maybe season 3, I'll go international. I don't know yet. I'll one step at a time, but I am extending out from regional only to regional and metro. So if you know anybody that started their own business, doing a little side hustle, earning some extra dollars on the side, whether it be, an internet-based company or whether it be bricks and mortar, it doesn't matter if they've been in the self-employment game for decades or they're only just getting started or about to get started. It doesn't matter. All the stories help, and the context around each of those individual stories is just gold as far as information, insight, perspective, and content, etc. So please keep the suggestions coming. Even if you think somebody may or may not be suitable, send it through anyway, because I'd love to just find out, because you never know. We all look at things from a different angle, and there could be a great opportunity there. There are a few thank yous that I have to put out there. Adrian Griffin, who's been a god when it came to setting up the Self-Starter website. Go and check out his business, ABEPE, ABEPE, and he does a lot of web development for larger businesses. But Adrian has been very gracious to help out the small fry me as well, and he's put together a really cool website that's certainly helped me get this content out to more people. So thank you, Adrian. Also, Tim Yatris of Equinox Studios, who helps edit these podcasts, and he does a great job. And I know sometimes it's extremely painful when I send him 50 million edits because these podcasts are really hard to record sometimes. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it. I could not do this without you. I don't have the patience to edit myself, and you certainly make this all work for me. So very, very thankful. Also, Dave and Anna from the Australian Podcast Awards. Thank you so much for all the support that you both have given this podcast and me, and also the Anti-Social Podcast, and also the journalists who have helped out, Beck Fist, Brendan Crabb, Jessica Clifford. There are a few others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but thank you so much. Newspapers like the Barrier Daily Truth, South Coast Register, the Milton Ulladulla Times, ABC Radio, some of the local community stations down here on the South Coast as well. Thank you very much for the exposure that you've given this podcast, and you've been able to help push the message out into the local community as well. It's just meant a lot to me to be able to get that kind of recognition. Going back to the Australian Podcast Awards, some big wins for me, being able to be a finalist for Host of the Year for the 2018 Australian Podcast Awards for Self-Starter. Also getting into the National Sound Archive in Canberra for Self-Starter as well. So really, really cool for that. Thanks, Larry. Speaking of edits and my bird, I must thank my bird, Larry Bird, for your support and your contribution to these podcasts, especially when I'm recording at home, and you often hear him at the end of these episodes as well. So thanks, Larry, for the comedic contributions to this podcast. And I must say, the last person and the most important person for this podcast, my wife, Jessica, thank you for being ultra patient with me as I have pushed myself and challenged myself on this self-employment journey and this Self-Starter podcast as well. There's been a lot of really challenging times along the way, and you've been extremely patient and supported me through every step. So I love you dearly, and thank you very much for that continuous support and patience, because I couldn't do it without you as well. So thank you very much. The last edit. Sorry, guys. I have to thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the contributions. Thank you for the feedback, the guest suggestions, talking about this podcast in a positive light. It means so much to me. It's kept me fueled. It's pushed me through the more challenging times, and it's motivated me to continue on into season 2, into 2019, and to continue to build this into something bigger and better along the way. So thank you so much. It means a hell of a lot to me. But for now, that is the end of season 1. Selfstarter.com.au. You can go and check out the other episodes of the podcast. You can check out the blog. I'm going to continue adding new blog posts on there. My bird is going off in the background. Shush. And stay in contact, please. I would love to hear your guest suggestions, your feedback. If you've got a great idea as to where Self-Starter as a whole will go in the future, please let me know. I'm always open to ideas. I've got a lot of great ideas myself. It's time to execute. And until June 2019, take care, guys. We'll speak soon. Ta-ta. Larry, please.